The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. As always, here with Sam. Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. The rapidly ascending Phoenix Suns up those Western Conference standings. No, I'm just a little bit of hyperbole.
Have they changed it at all recently? I actually don't. I haven't been. I'm afraid to look at the standings on a regular basis. I know they've been stuck in 8 for a while.
Yeah, we're eight now, but we were 10 and 9 recently, and then the Utah Jazz actually are a bit of a surprise to me. If you look at the standings right now, they're 8-2 in their last 10, and they're 9th, a game behind us, but they have the same number of wins at 21. So, but we're the 8th seed. Look, the sun exploded last week. We did our yearly tradition of this team fucking sucks, and let's talk about it. I don't know how many people listened to that episode. I was afraid to check the numbers. If you did, shout out to you. But we're back. 2 really critical wins in the past several days. Now we're going to, I think we're going to talk about it later in this episode, but, especially with some of the teams coming up on the schedule, we've got big tests ahead. Lots of Western Conference playoff teams that we're going to be playing. Which will be a good challenge for this fully healthy or almost fully healthy iteration of the Suns.
Yeah, the Suns are just behind the Dallas Mavericks, who are 5-5 in their last 10. So the Suns, if they continue to play well, will have a chance to pass them. The Suns don't have a lot of wins against great teams. We've talked about it before, I think last week. They don't have a lot of wins against great teams, and they're playing in the next week.
Minnesota.
They're playing the Kings, the Pelicans, the Pacers. Yeah, Minnesota on the second night of a back-to-back for the Timberwolves, if I want to put a caveat on that.
Yeah,
but they did beat Minnesota.
That was their only great win of the season. And then, we talked about the Knicks win. There were a couple others, but New Orleans coming up, Indiana coming up, Dallas coming up. Who's the other one? Sacramento coming up. These are big games.
Yeah.
These are, they're not the Milwaukees, they're not the Denvers, they're not the Bostons of the league, but if you can't beat these teams coming up in the next week or two that are like, several games above 500 right now, forget calling yourself a contender. You can't even call yourself a pretender, I think, if you can't start to beat some of these teams. So this will be a good challenge. And as a warm-up to all of that, we got to pound the Lakers, and we got to kind of squeak by a little bit the Portland Trailblazers. So I don't know, hopefully generating a little bit of momentum over the past few days at least.
Yeah, the Trailblazers are a team that just got demolished by multiple teams before they came in to play the Suns. Played with only 8 active players, and then the Suns still kind of threatened to give it away at the end. I think the lead got shrunk down to maybe 7 was the closest it got. We were watching that one on playback, and but they did win and ended up playing pretty well in the fourth quarter overall once the starters were in, but still struggled to generate offense at the beginning. Even if they created open shots, they just weren't going down. But it's tough because you're like, why can't the Suns beat a team by 30 or 40 or whatever? And part of it is because the bench is bad. Like, the only way you could really beat a team by that much is if the bench is also better than the other team's bench. And it's just been so long since I've felt confident that the Suns bench was playing better than the other team's bench, and that even included, in this case, the Portland Trailblazers, who most of their bench was starting.
Let's be clear, had 8 players available.
Yeah,
and the guys who were coming off the bench, Jesus Christ, we didn't know them on the playback. It was like Ryan Rupert. Yeah. Who was their 2-way guy that you were like, who is that? I don't even remember. His name started with an M.
I think it was like Monate or something like that.
That's definitely not it. But just to demonstrate. Just to demonstrate what we were up against with the Trailblazers. Yesterday was an interesting game for the Suns bench because sort of critically, and this is weird to say, but sort of critically. Minaya, thank you. What's his first name? Justin Minaya. Okay.
We'll never forget it now.
Shout out Justin Minaya. I think he was like the 57th pick in last year's draft. We looked it up.
Yeah.
Critically, Bol did not play yesterday. And
it's true.
And weirdly, this is an important absence for the Suns now. The way that he has played. For anyone who missed it, we did the playback for the game yesterday, but we did a playback the day before too of just a film study of just all of Bol's made shots and a lot of the other critical plays, a lot of defensive plays, a lot of assists as well. Steals, just all of his kind of box score events over the past couple of weeks. And he has played himself into, strangely enough, kind of an important role on the team's bench. Actually, Frank Vogel was asked about it by Dwayne last night too. And he brought up Bol by name, saying that, they missed Bol and they had to make a decision of what they were going to do in his absence. That, they ended up playing Chimezie Metu some more minutes. I think that's part of the reason that Keita Bates-Diop got a bunch of minutes. But, from the sound of it, based on how Frank was talking after last night's game, Bol is kind of entrenched in the rotation now. Like, he might be, going forward, as we play some playoff teams this next week, he might be the seventh or eighth man, and they might actually have, for better or worse, a decent amount of faith in him and his ability to play both the 4 and the 5. We know Drew Eubanks has really struggled, has been awful. Udoka Azubuike gave us a couple of good games at backup 5, but I don't think it's pretty clear now he's not going to be like the long-term option for the season. So they got to figure something out. And maybe Bol playing 25 minutes off the bench as both a 4 and a 5 is, until we get to the trade deadline, the closest kind of facsimile of a solution that they can come up with.
I was looking at stats for the last 10 games. Bradley Beal's been back for 9 games, and I think we can talk about him a little bit too, because he's rounding into form, I think you could say, with Bradley Beal, like looking like the Bradley Beal that we got used to watching in Washington lately for the Suns. But there's a couple reasons why I wanted to look at stats for the last 10 games. And one, they're 7-3 in the last 10 games. But two, Frank said they wanted to start solidifying an actual rotation to sort of no longer, guys not knowing whether or not they were going to play. So have some sort of game plan now that they have a good stretch of games with basically all of the players have played. Many of them showed that they're not worthy of being in the rotation. Some of them playing themselves into the rotation, I think, like Bol, and then to some extent Chimezie Metu in that time. So I brought up the last 10 games. Some of the things I thought were interesting in the last 10 games as far as Sun stats. 7-3 in that time. Nobody averaging over 25 points for the team in those wins. So with Bradley Beal sort of coming back and eating up some of those shots, Durant averaged over 30 for a while there at the beginning of the season. Devin Booker was averaging over 30 for a while there. But in this stretch where more guys are playing, the highest scoring player on the team was Devin Booker at 25 points per game. He's also one of only 4 players who played all 10 of those games. Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, Yusuf Nurkic, and believe it or not, the fourth guy, Chimezie Metu, played on all 10 of those games. So seems to be part of the rotation, even though I think at least one of them he only played in garbage time.
Am I allowed to hop in real quick and give my 2 cents just on the scoring so far? So you say Devin Booker there at 25 points per game. What's KD at over the last 10?
24.4.
Okay, so look, the fact that no one's scoring over 25 out of the big 3 over the last 10 and the Suns are winning games, I have one reaction, which is good. Good.
Yeah.
There are people online, and it's the usual suspects, right? But there are people who are about one particular player over the team that are crying about this. And I can't bring myself to fucking care. We want the team to arrive at a point where they're winning games. Of course, Durant and Booker and Beal, they're all going to get their opportunities to explode for 35, 40 points in certain games going forward. But especially with the way we've been talking about Devin Booker recently, I pulled up his last 10 game stats too. It's just kind of ridiculous to me, all the hemming and hawing about is Booker in a slump? Is this is he struggling at this point in the season right now? All the while, last 10 games, he's averaging 25 points, 6.5 assists. The volume stats are a little bit down. He's shooting 51 from the field, 38 from deep, 91 from the free throw line. This is over the last 10 games, and the team's winning. That's all that matters. Why do we care about anything else? Why does anyone care about anything else? Unless they have ulterior motives.
No, it doesn't matter. And particularly, I think, at this stretch of the season where they're so desperate for wins, nothing else matters. As well, I think if you think about it, for the long term of the season, the best case scenario for this team is that the whole weight of the team, the whole load that this team has to carry is shouldered by all three of these guys instead of like when Kevin Durant was averaging 30 points and the Suns were winning 40% of their games. That's not great. Like he's not going to last.
And it's not KD's
doing that.
And it's, to be clear, it's not KD's fault. We're not saying that was KD's fault that they weren't winning games. It's just that, again, for better or worse, these three need each other. We didn't think that we would need all three of them to be playing just to have a chance to beat teams like the Lakers, but here we are. It's January, and that's a fact. That's the situation. And if you look at Booker's, there are these accusations of him being selfish or whatever. If you look at the touch stats, Booker was averaging 81 touches per game in November. He averaged 81 touches per game in December. January, he's down to 60. He has arrived. Yes, he's still the point guard, but he's arrived basically at the place where he was when he played with Chris Paul last year or for the last few years on the Suns. He has these pressure release valves now, especially in Bradley Beal, who continues to get more and more comfortable game by game. And so he's not dominating the possession time. None of them are. All of them are in about the same place if you look at the touch data, and that is going to pay dividends for them going forward because, the team always used to talk about when Chris Paul was there how they were trying to limit everyone's individual touch time, their dribble time, so that they had more energy to play defense, more energy to make hustle plays, more energy to do the things that matter, ultimately, if you're trying to win games. And here we are. We don't have any player on the team right now when they're fully healthy who has to touch the ball 100 times per game. That does nothing productive for them over the long haul.
Yeah, the whole point of having multiple stars is that you don't have to do that. But in that stretch, 25 points for Devin Booker, 24.4 for Kevin Durant, and then Brad is up to 20.6 in the 9 games he played, 7 games played for Kevin Durant. Durant, in particular, I think has some room to even get better within this. Part of the reason that Devin Booker is shooting more is basically because Durant told him to. We've talked about that on our last Patreon episode, but Durant said, stop looking for me, stop trying to get people involved, be aggressive. Devin Booker obviously still will find ways to get other people involved. But when you have Devin Booker, you have Kevin Durant, you have Bradley Beal, you still want them to be Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. Like, don't change so much to the extent that you're not looking for your own shot. And I think that balance is starting to come together. We talked about that, and we expected that to be something that took some time for the three of them to get used to doing. And, it's just now that we're actually seeing a longer stretch of them playing together, we're starting to see it come together a little bit. I want to talk more about Bradley Beal, but just to talk about these stats a little bit. The other things that stand out to me, the 4th highest scorer on the team in those last 10 games, it's no surprise here, it's Grayson Allen, who's averaging in those 10 games, played all 10, 14.4 points per game on 9 field goal attempts, shooting 52% from the field and 50% from 3.
If
this stretch by Grayson Allen has been incredible. He's just been really, really good for this team. So really solid starter for this team and put in a position to do more than I think maybe he was expected to do when he was traded to the team, or maybe he expected it in the right way, maybe more than you and I expected him to do. And, on defense and just is really coming through solidly offensively for this team when they need it.
I'm sure you don't have this stat there. If I had to guess about Grayson, probably the guy who has the biggest variance in scoring there. He's going to have games where he has 25 points.
Right.
And he's going to have games where he shoots 1 for 7 from 3. He hasn't had many of those games because he's shooting upper 40s from 3 on the season. He has firmly established himself as one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA this season. And so, he needs to keep shooting. We want him to shoot pull-ups. We want him to shoot catch and shoots. We want him to continue driving because he can generate advantages off the bounce. And, I think he's been effective in those situations as well, just as a pure Morey Ball style, even kind of 3-and-D player this year.
Yeah.
Still taking on really difficult defensive challenges, sometimes, more than he's really capable of handling, if we're being honest. But for as long as this starting 5 continues to generate a positive net rating and a super positive net rating at that, you're going to keep Grayson Allen in that position as the 5th starter. You're going to keep him as the guy, often being the main primary point of attack defender until the wheels fall off, and they have not fallen off so far.
I think what was particularly helpful for Grayson It's when Kevin Durant is locked in defensively. I thought the Lakers game in particular showed more of what the Suns would attempt to do in the playoffs, in that Kevin Durant took on a bigger role defensively, in that he had to guard LeBron James and really kind of fought through screens and did his best to contest and tried to push him off of his spots as much as possible on LeBron James. And Durant, maybe he can't do that every single game in the regular season anymore. Well, and that's fine. But you can kind of see what their plan would be in the playoffs when Durant is willing and kind of has to do a little bit more with more minutes and guard guys that are bigger, because the Suns don't have a lot of guys that are capable of doing that.
But yeah, again, like Durant took 12 shots in that game. Do I want him taking 12 shots every game as the massively talented superstar that he is? No, but it just so happened that Bradley Beal was on fire in that game and Kevin Durant ended up taking 12 shots. Not a coincidence, I don't think, that he then transfers that sort of extra potential energy, channels it into other parts of his game, and has, I think, one of his best team defensive performances that we've seen from him all season, being, taking on the LeBron James assignment, but also just being super aggressive at the nail, and just being very disruptive, generating multiple steals. Like, it's not a coincidence to me that when you take more off of his plate offensively, he can have better defensive performances. That goes for him, it goes for Booker, it goes for all of the guys.
The other thing that stands out to me, the next two highest scores, no surprise here, 13.3 points for Yusuf Nurkic, 12 points for Eric Gordon. Two guys that are, like, I would call them consistent within their own roles. It's not to say that Eric Gordon won't have a night where he's 1 for 9 like we saw the other night. That's going to occasionally happen. And Yusuf Nurkic might have a game where he has 5 points and 13 rebounds instead of 12 points and 13 rebounds. But two guys that are relatively consistent within their roles. But then the next highest scorer in that group, 1 through 6, is those guys. The next highest scorer in that group is Bol Bol. Bol Bol only played 5 of the 10 games in the last 10 game stretch, but the Suns are 4-1 in those games. And as much as I want to say this is awesome to see his 7 points per game on 78% shooting and 75% from 3, it's not the important part about what he's adding, but his ability to score and the fact that he's not a complete offensive liability has been a big reason why he's able to stay on the floor. In particular, when we were watching film, we talked about this, the ability, I think, to play him minutes alongside a center, where he's kind of playing that power forward role, that helper defensive role. Yep. It's huge. He has to be able to shoot threes. He has to be able to catch it and drive to the rim occasionally. For him, he has a few plays where he's making the right read on a pump fake, a drive and kick like a guard would do, essentially. He's agile, so he's capable of doing that.
Multiple assists on driving kicks, too, where, we talked about in that film session, he throws bullet passes, and he's so tall that if he's, there are a couple plays where he's driving, and then he tosses out a bullet pass to a perimeter shooter like an Eric Gordon or a Devin Booker, and it almost sails above their heads and they're not able to catch it. Sometimes has to rein it in a little bit, and but he's making the right reads. He's taking what the taking what the defense is giving him, and then making the proper read. He's not taking stupid shots. We understand that his touch inside the paint, just outside the paint, is really good. So you want to reward him occasionally and give him those looks, but he's not taking, like, I don't know, just ridiculous, like, off the dribble, turnaround, whatever. Like, he's treating it like a joke, right? He's playing within himself and reining it in just a little bit, so that we can kind of get the best possible version of Bol Bol.
So that's 7 players that we're talking about here. Now, I'll repeat them. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen, Yusuf Nurkic, starters. Eric Gordon, Bol Bol, off the bench. Now, when we're talking about solidifying a rotation here for the regular season, assuming everyone's healthy, the guy who played the most games after that, averaging the next highest amount of points, is Chimezie Metu, and then you could follow that up as far as games played with Josh Okogie, who played 9, missed 1 game in that time.
And averaged 3 points or something.
3 points per game, yeah, exactly. Nice. Chimezie Metu, not much more impressive, only shooting 29% from 3 in that time span, but in a sense, if you play him next to Bol Bol, Metu effectively plays the offensive role of center, instead of playing the power forward role, which he can kind of do both a little bit. Is that the rotation now? I guess we're talking about the starters: Eric Gordon, Bol, Chimezie Metu, Josh Okogie. That's 9 guys right now, and then of course occasionally a big if they need a big, whether that be Drew Eubanks or Azubuike.
Man. It's difficult to say. So first of all, with the 4 guys you mentioned, I guess Josh Okogie, he's a guard, right? We're counting him kind of as a guard then in the minutes he's going to play.
He's a forward on this team, I think. Right.
So Eric Gordon is the one guard off the bench, Kogi on the wing. It doesn't quite make sense because I'm not sure I buy into Metu and Bol. Like, they can definitely play together. Don't get me wrong. They can certainly play together as the 4 and 5, but I don't think you're going to want many minutes of them playing together, like, consistently. So I don't know if that can be a 9-man rotation. Are you saying would you rather have just Chimezie and Bol as your 8 and 9 and just not play Eubanks, not play Azubuike, and not play a real big for the rest of the season if you could get away with it?
I think that there are times where that would probably be okay. Depending on when these guys are playing. It puts a lot on Yusuf Nurkic's plate, who somehow, even in that span where they won 10 games, only averaged 26 minutes a game, partially thanks to still being able to try Eubanks against teams like the Portland Trailblazers, just because they are not very good, for example, and also Azubuike playing occasionally and just trying different things in that time. But I don't know. Like, do you want to see more Eubanks? It's really tough to ask for that. And then even Udoka, as much as at times he just looks better than Eubanks, I think that he's given a lot of leeway because of how awful Eubanks has been. Not even saying Eubanks, but just how awful the team looks when Eubanks is on the floor.
It's sort of a function of our expectations too, right? Like, technically the minutes with Udoka on the floor have not been great. Net rating wise, they haven't been great. It's been better than Eubanks, don't get me wrong, but it's still not positive. But because Udoka is a 24-year-old two-way contract, I think we all do give him a longer leash when he comes in. And, there are positive attributes to his game. He's huge, right? It's hard to move him. He can play like a true big, but I'm just...
Get some highlight blocks.
Some highlight blocks, for sure. I just, at this point of the season, I'm not sure I see, a consistent 15-minute per game role for Udoka for the rest of them converting his two-way contract and cutting someone else doesn't really feel like it's going to happen at this point. I know he had those couple of good games 2 weeks ago, but it hasn't been, a consistent theme.
I guess the way to put it for me is going forward, I am most confident in the starters playing and then Eric Gordon, Bol, Chimezie Metu, and Josh Okogie playing off the bench. Everyone else, there's a question mark next to their name as far as whether or not they're going to play. Drew Eubanks, can't count on him to play every game. I think that's one of the biggest guys left out. The other biggest guy I think left out at this point is Nasir Little. He's on the longest contract of any of these guys off the bench. Has been hurt, to be fair,
but available in the past couple games. And
I think he was available in the Portland game, and I think even played a little bit in the Lakers game.
He did.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. He's been available, but has not been the guy that Frank has gone to. Kind of being shunned in favor of Keita Bates-Diop in those 2 games. Which, to be honest, guys, at this point, I think I've said it multiple times, but just is a decision I don't understand at all anymore.
Yeah.
We were on the playback last night talking about those minutes where Josh Okogie and Keita Bates-Diop came in, and KD was playing the 5. And so you had KD at the 5, but then on offense, Keita Bates-Diop was the screener. That was something that you pointed out. And on there's just no spacing, no rebounding, no anything in that lineup. I was like, what is this? Yeah. This is not, Keita does not have the skill set to make this work just because he has long arms. I wish he did, but we haven't seen it.
I agree. He's one of those guys where it would be nice if it started to work, and I think there was a short stretch in the Portland game where it was okay. The first half in particular before they went small, and really it's like a drop of water in the desert, right? Because you're like, oh sweet, a drop of water, it's gonna sustain me for the longest period of time it can. but it's still just a drop of water.
He had that one
we
play.
haven't seen
He had that one play where he attacked a closeout and then like shifted around. I don't remember who the defender was, but finished with his, maybe it was his right hand, but it was just like a long Mikal Bridges-esque finish at the rim. But just the fact that it was a self-created bucket from Keita Bates-Diop, both of you and I reacted like, holy shit, look, he did something. And
off a closeout. And I think that's why you could almost defend Frank for trying, in the same way that the toolbox is there for Bol, but none of it was working, and you just have to sort of rearrange it, and now it's starting to work a little bit. I do think Keita Bates-Diop shot over 40% from three last year. Keita Bates-Diop had the ability of attacking closeouts last year and scoring occasionally on those closeouts. You know, not a lot of passing. The defense is still questionable, but I think when you're coming off the bench, it's questionable for any of these guys, so it's not like you're giving up too much there. So if you could find a way, if he starts shooting 40% from three again, if he starts attacking closeouts and scoring on those closeouts, he's tall, so you have that. If you find a way to maybe shift it around a little bit, maybe it'll work, but you know, it hasn't up till this point, and you know, maybe Frank will continue to try that against teams that really have no chance of beating the Suns, but maybe not. You know, in this conversation, in this case, I'd like to, you know, maybe hear from people listening, fans, what they think the rotation should be at this point. Is there anyone that's out of it that should be in it? Is there anyone that's in it that should be out of it? And I guess I'll extend that question to you. Out of these guys that are left out, Nasir Little, Drew Eubanks, Keita Bates-Diop, Yuta Watanabe, Saban Lee, Udoka, like whoever else you want to include. Well, I guess I'll say it this way. This is probably the best way to ask it. Out of everyone that's not currently in the rotation right now that we just mentioned, is Damian Lee more likely to be in the rotation than any of those guys?
Yeah, man. We talked about this on
he's healthy.
We talked about this on the Patreon pod, right? We still have not heard any information about. Obviously, what is his injury? Is it a meniscus? Is it?
Yeah,
I
think it's a meniscus.
couldn't remember.
Well, I don't really know for sure, actually. Yeah,
I thought it was a meniscus, but I can't remember because it's been so long.
Knee surgery he had.
Meniscus injury will be out until further notice, according to his basketball reference page. So it's going to be a while. This is a guy who shot 45% from deep last year and played. Let me remind folks, Damian Lee played 74 games last year for the Suns.
The sixth most minutes on the team.
20 minutes per game. And I know he's not the sexiest player. He's certainly not a defensive player if you're talking about bolstering the defense. And you could even argue that, you know, his skill set overlaps quite a bit with Eric Gordon's. Eric Gordon just kind of being a better version of him, to be honest. But when you look at the rest of the options that we have, Damian Lee I've seen play positive minutes for the Suns, like a lot last year. And the rest of these guys are massive question marks to the point where I'm like, yeah, once Damian Lee comes back, it kind of feels to me like he deserves a real go in this rotation. He could solidify a serious role for him. I could even see him playing in the playoffs. You know,
and he might not come back until March.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not talking.
Right?
I'm not talking about this being like, oh, Damian Lee's going to be back in 2 weeks. He would be back probably in post trade deadline for sure. But once he's there, yeah, I could see him. You know, the rotations slim down in the playoffs. So like maybe he becomes a 10-minute per game guy, so that you can avoid having other teams target him defensively. But I could see him playing because the rest of these guys can't hit the broadside of a barn. You know, they're all shooting less than 30%. They're
going to stay small.
They're all shooting less than 30% from deep. You know, Okogie's my guy, but him too. Keita Bates-Diop can't shoot. Yuta Watanabe can't shoot. Nasir Little can't shoot until one of them finds. The other guy I will say, because you're asking me who should play. We should have a longer conversation about this. It's January 15th. What does January 15th mean?
Let's take a quick break, actually.
Okay.
And when we come back, I want to continue the conversation about the rotation a little bit and then apply it to the trade market. So we'll be right back in just a second. Okay, you mentioned it. It's January 15th, and that means essentially this is really, I think, the sort of the firing gun for the starting gun for the trade market, if you will, in that basically everyone in the NBA is eligible to be traded except Bradley Beal, who who has he could just decline any trade he wants because he has a no trade clause. But let me just continue a little bit on the rotation because I think this is going to apply directly to the trade conversation because I want to narrow down what the Suns should be looking for in this trade discussion, in this trade market, just so that we can sort of use this as a starting spot for us in these conversations. I know we've talked about it all the time already, but really say this is the beginning. So this is what we're going to talk about going forward. I mentioned the rotation here. I want to mention too, in those 10 games, the starting lineup has a plus 21.5 net rating, just beating the hell out of teams. Do they still have a problem in the fourth quarter? Yes, we're not going to have that conversation again today unless you have something new to talk about with that, Sam. But I do think when we're talking about this rotation,
wait for the next fourth quarter collapse loss.
Of course.
To talk about it then.
We'll panic at that point.
Sure.
The thing that stands out when I talked about this rotation is they're little, right? They're small, right? I mean, there's no real center off the bench unless you count Bull. And, Drew Eubanks could play, Azubuike could play. That's the first thing. There's no tall wing player outside of Kevin Durant. Maybe I guess you can count Bull in that specific conversation, but we're talking about maybe a little more beefy, big as far as a wing player. And also there's no backup point guard. Those are the things that we're talking about for this team. So when you're talking about what they need, what they could potentially look for in the trade market, we're talking about like the three major positions on basketball team.
They need a guard, a forward, and
big.
A center. Yes, all of the original, James Naismith identified positions in basketball. Well, I'm going to tell you guys right now, we've identified those three things, right? Guard, big wing, center. They're not going to address all three of those at the deadline. Do you think they are?
It'd be really hard.
No,
it'd be really hard.
We don't have assets. So
which one? Okay, I guess this is the way to talk about it then. How would you rank the need of those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, let's go back to the Lakers game. Chris Haynes reported during that game that the Suns were looking for a big wing.
Yes.
I think that's important to identify. Not
athletic wing is what he said, which I don't know if that is a differentiator enough, but something about athletic just stood out.
Yeah, you want your NBA players to be athletic, I guess.
Yeah. They all are in reality.
Yeah. So I think that's important. Not that Chris Haynes has a 100, he's not batting 1,000 when it comes to Suns rumors, but I trust him on this one. I think it just makes
without Chris Paul feeding stuff to him, I'm not sure.
It just makes sense though, right? Like this.
Yeah.
This is what they need because this is where we look at the Keita Bates-Diop signing has been so far an abject failure. The Yuta Watanabe signing has been an abject failure, and these were the guys who were supposed to carry the load as backup fours. And have just not been able to do so. So I put that...
But you're not going as far to say that the Nasir Little trade is that yet, right?
That the Nasir Little trade is what?
I'm just, that's not a failure yet. I think there is a little bit of leeway in my mind where Nasir Little is young enough, athletic enough, and has played through injuries enough that I think maybe there's more there than we've tapped into.
Yeah.
And we have time to develop it. Obviously the biggest trade asset, though.
So the Nasir Little trade, obviously I know you didn't mean it like this, but the Nasir Little trade was not a failure because Yusuf Nurkic and Grayson Allen fucking rock.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
it has not been a failure.
They're part of the most important line
by any stretch of the imagination. As for Nasir Little, I always just kind of considered him a throw-in. But to return really briefly to our rotations conversation, I would start playing Nasir Little over Keita Bates-Diop over the next few weeks.
Yes,
because
same.
A, because I think he's better, but B, because I think Nasir Little is the only guy you can trade. I mean, That's not true. You could trade Grayson Allen, but I don't want to. Nasir Little is probably the only mid-sized contract you could trade, and you should be playing him right now to try him out for other teams. He should be playing...
Try him out for other teams and also see if there's anything there. For us.
He should be playing 15 minutes per game for the next month or for the next 3 weeks until the trade deadline, just to see if there's anything there that another team might want to tap into.
Okay, so
I would be playing him right
wing,
now.
guard, big... I think you and I just are going to agree right now. I'm going to say that we can probably agree on the order in as far as biggest priority to least priority is wing, big, and then guard.
Yes.
Am I wrong about that? Yeah, okay, so wing is the number one priority.
Number one
big
wing.
is the number two.
Number two is big because let's face it, if Yusuf Nurkic goes down for any reason right now, we are fucked. because we just like, what would we do? You know, there was a time at the beginning of the season where we were like, oh yeah, Nurk could go down for 20 games. Eubanks, he's got it. If that happens now, he does not have it. He really does not have it, folks. Like, you know, Biz is out there. We've talked about, you know, Bismack Biyombo. Maybe there's mutual interest. Maybe there's not. But, you know, there's like, that would be a guy who I would at least have some level of faith in to play 15 minutes and use up a bunch of his fouls. And the reason I'm sliding, by the way, the reason guard also slides in at number 3 is just that since Bradley Beal has returned to the lineup, turnovers have become less of an issue for the Suns. I don't know if you noticed this in your last 10 games.
No, I did. Yeah.
Statistics, last 10 games, the Suns are averaging 25.3 assists to 12.4 turnovers per game as a team. 12.4 turnovers, if that were their stat for the entire season, would make them one of the best teams in the NBA in terms of ball security, in terms of being a conservative ball handling team. Of course, in reality, they average like close to 15 turnovers per game because it's been a major issue for them on the season, but not in the past 10 games since Bradley Beal has actually been healthy. And since Devin Booker has, you know, also had the opportunity to rein it in, have fewer touches, and not necessarily carry that same fatigue with him throughout all 4 quarters. So, you know, I think they could still benefit from a point guard for sure. But the people who are hand-wringing about Devin Booker can't play point guard right now, and like that's the biggest issue that this team is facing, it's just
they're not watching.
It's not. I feel like there are obviously some Suns fans who feel that way, but most of the people who are parroting that at this point, it's outside noise. It's, you know, you're hearing it from like national people. Yeah.
It's, to me, it's this team is an experiment because there's no point guard, and they're thinking about that, and they're looking at the record. And then they're just saying 1 + 1 = 2 in this case, and that's not always the case. I do think it's funny that point guard is last on our list. It's not to say that I wouldn't want all 3. The ideal scenario is they could find a way to get all 3 and use the worst players on this team as trade assets, right? But that's just not. It just doesn't happen that way in the NBA. Now, I do want, before we move on, and I want to just kind of throw some guys at you too, because this is where that starts. As far as guys that they could potentially trade for, I do want to just have the conversation quickly about if the Suns end up trying to get a buyout candidate like who did you say? Bismack Biyombo, I think is probably, I guess that's not technically, he's just cut.
He was already cut. So, I mean, he's just out there. But yeah, buyout candidates could be anyone. Well, I'll put it this way. You know, like Gordon Hayward was a guy who was rumored a couple days ago that he could be a buyout candidate for someone in the NBA. And I went on Twitter and explained to people just as a reminder that the Suns, by virtue of being over the second apron, can only actually I would have to double check this, but this may even be a first apron rule, not a second apron. So there might be more teams that this
either way.
To.
Suns not in. It applies to the Suns.
Yeah, the Suns cannot claim or sign any buyout candidate whose previous salary that they were cut from made over the mid-level exception, which is about $12 million.
12 and a half.
12 and a half. Yeah. So any player who gets cut, this is a PSA for all of you if you're thinking about roster baiting. Any player who gets cut over the next month, go to their basketball reference page, check their salary. If that salary is over $12.5 million, then the Suns cannot get them. If it's Chris Paul, the Suns cannot get them.
If it's Gordon Hayward,
nope.
Yeah.
But
it'd be great.
Yeah, but if it's a player who makes $5 million, $10 million, then we're in business. And those are the types of guys we're going to be looking at the buyout market.
So just quickly, there's a problem with the Suns that the Suns have when it comes to cutting players, and that is that Bol and Chimezie Metu are the only guys that don't have a player option. As far as the bench guys that are on, like the rest of them are essentially on 2-year deals. So Keita Bates-Diop, Josh Okogie,
Watanabe,
even
Damian Lee, I think.
Yeah. They all have, you know, like a player option in the next year. I guess, does that not matter? Just who cares, I guess? I don't know what the rule is for cutting guys that have player options. Can you just cut them? Can you just buy them out by paying their second year to them right now?
I think you would. I don't know the answer to that, so I should have looked that up. But I think you would just pay out their salary next year as, you know, normal, and it's just on you to foot the bill. That's a Matt Ishbia decision. You know, I would be totally fine with doing that.
Yeah, because it's just money, right?
It's $2 million, $2.5 million in the case of most of these guys, and if they're not good, then they're not good. Like if Drew Eubanks isn't good now, he's not going to be good next year. If Yuta Watanabe isn't good now, he's not going to be good next year. Sadly, in those cases, those are not guys who are 23 years old. They're 27, and they are what they are. I think Jordan Goodwin has a team option for next year, so that might be one to consider as well. I don't think Jordan Goodwin has actually been so bad that I would cut him. But I think that's a guy where, if
you could trade him for a second round pick or something like that.
If you weren't going to pick up his team option next year anyway, and I think they probably should, but if you weren't, then I guess that's another guy who's kind of on a 1-year deal if you think about it.
Yeah.
So.
It's a scenario where if the Suns could trade 2 guys and get 1 guy back, that would solve a lot of problems for them if they also want to sign a buyout candidate, and that's why I wanted to talk about that before we got to the big part of it. So January 15th, if anyone was confused as to why January 15th is the beginning of the real trade season, it's because if any team re-signed a player, then those players are now eligible to be traded. December 15th is the date that newly signed free agents from other teams are able to be traded, but anyone that's retained is able to be traded as of January 15th. So this is just where the whole NBA is now available to be traded, and it just opens up a lot of options, opens up a lot of availability for guys that are out there. Now, the first thing I did was look at different articles that broke down trade targets, and the reality is most of them are impossible for the Suns to get. We're not talking about Zach LaVine here. We're not talking about Pascal Siakam here.
We're not talking
the Suns
about...
don't have the ability to get them. They don't have the salary.
We're not talking about, because a bunch of you got boomed on Twitter over the weekend, Julius Randle, who, by the way, just to be clear, I never said that the Suns would be going for Julius Randle. Yeah,
of course.
There was some misinformation out there.
Yeah, of course. So there's guys that you're looking at that make a little bit less money, and then there's guys that make a little bit more if you're willing to part with Grayson Allen, I guess, is the only way to really get to the salary for those kinds of guys. So is there anyone, first of all, I have only 4 names listed here, and I'm sure we'll come up with more as the season rolls along and as rumors start to heat up. But is there any names that immediately stand out in your mind when talking about those guys?
Wait, when talking about...
Just anyone that fits the salary that the Suns could potentially trade.
Oh, we already talked about Sadiq Bey. So I'll start here. I'm not trading Grayson Allen. I'm just not interested.
Okay, so
is there a name that you could talk me into at the $15 million salary range that would
let's do it this
necessitate a Grayson Allen trade that's worth it?
I'm going to read 4 names to you, and then I want you to rank them with the caveats attached to them. Here's the 4 names that this could be potential trade targets for the Suns. And by the way, if you're someone that has very high expectations for trade targets for the Suns, a listener here, lower them right now before I read these names, okay? If you have to pause it right now, take a break, drink some water, and come back before you've lowered your expectations, go ahead and do that right now. Okay, here's the 4 names. You can rank them. Sadiq Bey, with the caveat that you could potentially trade for him using your trade exception. In fact, these first 3 names, you could potentially do that. Sadiq Bey, Torrey Craig, and Andre Drummond as the big off the bench. And then the 4th name is Dorian Finney-Smith, with the caveat that you would have to trade Grayson Allen and Nasir Little. Not even saying they would want that, for the record. I'm just putting it out there as a name that would be. If you're willing to part with both of those guys, this would be the type of option that you'd be looking at.
Yeah,
How would you rank those 4 guys?
Very little interest on most of them. So let's see. What's the deal with Andre Drummond right now? I have to look at his numbers.
It's a minimum. It's 3. It's a minimum, but for guys that have been in the NBA a long time, so it's a little bit over 3.
Okay,
million.
The reason I'm a little puzzled on the Drummond thing, what makes us think, because Chicago's kind of turned their season around low key. So, this feels to me like a name that maybe made more sense a month ago, but are we sure? Are we sure they're still willing to sell?
Well, if they trade Zach LaVine...
They're 19 and 22. They're 9th in the Eastern Conference. But they were 5 and 15 a month ago, Kobe
until
White.
Zach LaVine stopped playing.
Kobe White has legitimately turned their season around. It's kind of remarkable, actually.
Well, here's what I will say. I looked up the list of the 35 players that are most interesting on the trade market on the Athletics website today, and Andre Drummond was included.
Okay, yeah, no, on
that
sure.
list. So
sure. Yeah, I would take Andre Drummond. I would take Andre Drummond. I would take Torrey Craig. I guess I didn't even think about the fact Torrey Craig, another Bull. Yes, I would take him. I think it would be funny. In fact, I might rank Torrey Craig.
Well, let me just say this. You can get Drummond and Torrey Craig for Nasir Little's salary.
You could get both?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be great. I mean, that might be kind of low-key an ideal trade. If
Nasir Little for Andre Drummond and Torrey Craig, yeah, because it's like they get younger. If they want to get younger, they get younger.
We get a 33-year-old and a 30-year-old, but guys who could play in the playoffs.
Get older who would play off of our bench and actually have experience in the NBA. Drummond, for those who don't know, is just playing pretty well. Like, he's a good backup center now. He's just good.
Drummond, also, I want to say he was on the Lakers when they were coached by Frank Vogel, right? That was during the Vogel run.
Was.
So, yeah, he was. Has that experience. Even played, in a playoff series with them. He wasn't on the championship team, but he played on a Frank Vogel Lakers team. So that bodes well in his favor, too. Yeah, I like those two guys. Sadiq Bey, obviously at the top. The guy who would be at the bottom for me is Dorian Finney-Smith, just because I don't see the value.
Even though he's the best player of the group.
Yeah, I don't see the value in swapping Grayson Allen. Let me ask you about a name that just moved from Washington in a trade that was announced like a day ago. Do you have any interest in Danilo Gallinari, who is now a Detroit Piston? Might be bought out. That's true. If he's not bought out, was a guy who I think is making exactly the Nasir Little salary figure, like around $6 million. Does he have is he washed? Yes. Does he have?
That's the question.
Does he have the
right?
juice left? Right. He's not a big wing who can defend and grab rebounds. He's just not.
No.
He is a big wing in the sense that he is tall in inches. At his best, he would maybe be a better version of Yuta Watanabe, kind of more what the Suns envision Yuta Watanabe being. But is he washed? Is an important question for sure.
It's I'm interested more particularly as a buyout candidate, and I have a list of buyout candidates. In fact, if you want to rank these buyout candidates, we could play the same game of you ranking these. I feel like we're making TikTok content at this point. I'm making you rank players. That's what gets TikTok in a real
I'm not
frenzy.
but I'm not nearly good enough at like appealing to the TikTok attention span. I gotta like rattle them off like go.
Yeah, Kyle, turn the TikTok camera on. Sam, rank these buyout candidates. PJ Tucker. You're going to love this one. Alec Burks.
Okay.
Thaddeus Young.
Okay.
Chetty Osman. And Danilo Gallinari.
All right. I'm putting... I'm putting Danilo... PJ's fourth. That's what I'm feeling first. PJ Tucker fourth because he's almost useless. I think he's just doesn't have much juice left to squeeze.
I think that's fair. He's friends with both of the stars on our team, the major stars on the team.
Fifth at the absolute bottom, and this is my guy, but I'm putting Alec Burks there because he's just too redundant with what we have. He
doesn't really. Yeah, it's just another shooting guard.
He's a shooting guard.
Right?
He's not a point guard, and he's not a defender. So it's just.
Okay, so that means you have Chetty, Thad, and Gallinari.
Is Thad playing
left?
Is Thad playing well this year? I saw.
No,
I
don't think he's playing much at all. Let me check how he's doing. Okay, Thaddeus Young in his
11
15th
games.
season?
Yeah. Oh my god.
At this point, something like that. Is averaging 3 points per game. Has played 11 games. Yeah, maybe he's injured. I don't think he's injured. Maybe he's just out of the rotation entirely.
2.5 steals per 36. Thad Young, let's go. Let's go. He's always been so good at that. Even
he'd
in
be
his
a
old
center
age.
on this team, basically,
yes,
right?
He
a
would.
Backup center.
Yeah, and he'd be okay. I'd probably put him number 3 between Osman and Gallo. Jetty's not a big wing really either.
Yeah, but I would put him first.
He can shoot. He can like reliably shoot. Yeah, maybe Jetty Osman goes first because I think he can shoot. Gallo goes second because maybe you can tap into that. Thad Young third. PJ fourth. Alec Burks fifth. None of those names instantly makes me think, thank God we're saved. I'm not going to lie to you.
Of course. Yeah, these are... Well, I do think Chetty, as much as he's maybe an overconfident player, he would give the bench a player who can dribble, who's a forward, who can shoot, who's, willing to attack in transition, just a little bit unafraid. And sometimes when I watch, Kidabits, Diop, and Yuta especially, what stands out is just how afraid they are to do anything at all times. A little injecting that bench with a little bit of confidence, a little bit more of Eric Gordon, if you will, wouldn't hurt in this case. So yeah, I agree with that. Those are all guys who could be bought out. Not saying all of them will be, and maybe Chetty's the least likely. But like, what's he doing on that? He's got an expiring contract. What's he doing on that San Antonio team? Do they want to keep him? Because if they don't, why not let him go to a team where he actually wants to play? And maybe the Suns would be interested there. PJ obviously would bring more of a backup center vibe to this team, but like has just not been good in a while. Wasn't good on Philadelphia. Hasn't cracked in the rotation at all in Los Angeles. So, if he gets bought out, first of all, I think he even has an extra year on his contract beyond this year. So they'd have to put up a lot of money to do it. And I don't know. It's fine, I guess. So what we're saying is best case scenario, Nasir Little for Andre Drummond and Torrey Craig. And then you cut some players and sign Chetty Osman on the bench. Now all of a sudden your bench has Torrey Craig, Chetty Osman, Andre Drummond, and then they're playing with Bol and Eric Gordon. And we fixed it, right?
That's definitely up
it's
there.
Fixed.
That's up there right now for maybe the best option. So I'm just looking at all of the available players, all of the NBA players in like the $5 to $7 million salary range right now to see who else is here. Should I just continue to throw names at you for the next 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Furkan Korkmaz, Philadelphia 76ers, shooting guard, 6'7".
Doesn't help our size.
Doesn't play for he's apparently wanted off the Sixers for literally 4 years.
He hates them.
And they have trapped him in the eternal time vortex. They have imprisoned him and said, you will remain. This is his 7th season as a Philadelphia 76er, and he's still only 26 years old. I'm not going to lie. I don't really see the point of this one, but I would not be surprised if he's available for basically a cheeseburger. Chumo Kiki, that was a favorite of David's when he came on the pod a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I liked that name. You know what?
I do too. Not playing at all, really.
Well, he is now. This is
a little bit
funny thing about it. He started playing 15, 20 minutes for them recently, so it would be kind of interesting to gauge how they feel about him. Let's see who else is out here. Nick Richards,
38 minutes in their overtime game versus Atlanta.
7-foot legitimate center Nick Richards of the Charlotte Hornets, who is starting games for them right now and makes only $5 million. Is there any chance that they would just give him away? He is.
So he's probably a restricted free agent at the end of this year, right?
No, because he was I think he was a second-round pick originally. So this is not his rookie.
So yeah, maybe they would.
This is not his rookie contract anymore. He's on a 3-year deal, a flat rate of $5 million for the next 3 years. He's averaging 8.6 points, 7.5 rebounds. He plays 24 minutes a game. He's probably the worst starting center in the NBA currently. But he would be a good, capable backup, I think. And I don't know if Charlotte wants to retain him, then I would get it. But he's also already 26 years old, so he doesn't feel particularly like a youth movement guy to me. And I would be curious just if they would be willing to move a guy
Eubanks'
like that.
age, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Mason.
I don't hate that. Yeah, I don't hate that.
Mason Plumlee, Los Angeles Clippers.
Be fantastic.
Had his minutes maybe stolen by Daniel Tice. What's going on there?
I would love that. I mean, that would solve the problem.
Or would you take?
Assuming he's okay after his injury.
If maybe Tice is going to stop playing, I don't.
Tice is a little small, whereas Mason Plumlee, I think could do a lot of the stuff that Nurkic does for the Suns offensively, and that Plumlee's a really good passer as a big, and just would be able to do a little bit more of that. I guess Tice is kind of a shooter, so you can kind of say that he can do that, but. Plumlee's bigger, capable of passing, not the greatest offensive threat, and maybe after this injury is not great, but I would love Mason Plumlee off the bench.
Yeah, now I'm looking at the rest of the names. I don't see.
Maybe he could be a buyout candidate, actually.
I'm just looking for basically we talk every year about how the play-in tournament has kind of screwed things up, so there's not as much of a seller's market anymore. Every team is good. It's really hard. Team. Well, also, right now in the NBA in particular, the bad teams are so bad that it's kind of swung the pendulum back to where there are a lot of teams that are just around 500 and hanging around. And then you basically just need to look at, okay, who's on the Wizards, who's on the Pistons. Like
that's what I keep doing. Who's on the Wizards? Who's on the Pistons?
Who's on the Spurs?
On the Hornets?
Who's on the few bad teams? Yep.
I've done it a bunch of times. It's just not a lot there. I mean, Gafford as a trade candidate would be great, but he makes like $13 million, and the Suns it'd be really difficult for the Suns to get up to the salary necessary to get somebody like Daniel Gafford on the Suns. You'd have to trade 5 guys, and they can't do that.
Yeah, we'll come up.
Anyone else stand out to you?
Not right now. I'm continuing to scroll through. We'll come up with more names.
Well, if anyone has some, send them to us. Yeah, we'll use your ideas on the podcast, or even call us. Leave us a voicemail with your ideas if you'd like. Next few games before we switch over to take some voicemails. Just want to mention next few games: Kings, Pelicans at New Orleans, and then Pacers. The other 2 games are at home, and then I think Dallas shortly after that. Tough stretch for the Suns. All teams, well, the Western Conference teams that are just above them in the standings, if the Suns want to have a chance to be out of the play-in, they got to win against the Pelicans. They got to win against the Kings. They got to win against the Dallas Mavericks, because there's a chance that they end up tied with these teams at the end of the season. And having a chance to win those tiebreakers is going to be really important. Not to mention, they want to make the playoffs at all, they got to start beating good teams. So this is where they have a chance to do it. They've had a little bit of continuity lately, and we'd like to see them do that. You got anything else before we switch over to voicemail, Sam?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back listening to some voicemails. 480-420-6553 is our phone number. You can call us anytime, day or night, and we will.
From any room in your house, the basement, the attic, the bathroom. Call us whenever, wherever, and we'll be here.
That's right. And you can leave us a voicemail. We'll listen to as many as we can on podcast episodes. Try to keep them relatively short in order for us to be able to listen to them. So here we go. Let's listen to a couple right now.
Hey, Mike and Sam. This is Hooper Fidel from the Discord. Very quick question for you guys, and this is coming after the Clippers loss. So have that as the context for this question. Can the Suns afford to wait until the trade deadline to make a move, or do they need to do something sooner to turn the season around? Thanks, guys.
Hooper Fidel from the Discord. That's his name on the Discord. Good question, and I appreciate including the context of the question in the question, because every 2 games feels like a lifetime for this team, because after the Clippers loss, everything was over, and then 2 wins since then, all of a sudden we're having a podcast about how well they're playing. So good context for that one. So Sam, can the Suns wait until the trade deadline, or should they try to do something sooner? What do you think?
No, look, I want to believe that I would have given the same answer regardless if we had responded to this the day after the Clippers loss. Yes, they can wait. They should wait. I mean, if the right move comes along, then they can make that move. But
that's exactly right. Yeah.
I believe that now that they are afforded this period of health, relative health, that they should take advantage of it, use the continuity and, just get ready for the first week of February, because that's when the moves are actually going to come. We always expect to see them in basically the final 24 or 48 hours immediately before the trade deadline.
I agree with that. I think the real point I want to reiterate is, if you find the right move, just do it. Don't wait just because the deadline's coming. And if you're going to try to, to get something less out of it, just make the move if you have the right move. If not, wait till the last minute, see what you can get. If you can't get anything good, that might just be the team that we have going into the playoffs, But if you got it, make it sooner. And then, of course, if you need to cut guys and sign them on the buyout market, do that as well. Here we go. Here's another one.
Hey, fellas. This is Jake out of Phoenix. And, wanted to call. I know the vibes are a little weird. Everybody's a little, disappointed in the fellas. But I, for one, think I found the solution to all of our problems, which is 100% three-point shooter on the season, Drew Eubanks. More seriously, what do you guys think about trying crazy stuff at this point in the season? Like, why don't we let Drew start to try and shoot corner threes, space the floor out a little bit? Since clearly him passing the paint and, his verticality hasn't been either implemented well or he's just not been very good. Just kind of weird. Are there any other weird things you guys think are fun to try, or you think we should try? Okogie at center, 6'4" Giannis vibes, that kind of stuff. Thanks, guys.
Is Giannis just tall Okogie?
He absolutely is. Great question and great observation, Jake. They have a similar level of basketball skill.
It's just the only difference is body. No, so is Drew Eubanks secretly a sniper, and the Suns have been ignoring that all season?
Well, here's what I was going to say is that he's been so, as Jake pointed out, he's been so bad that I don't think it could get worse if when Drew Eubanks plays, like he's not finishing inside really at a high rate. I don't feel like he's developed this sensational pick and roll or alley-oop chemistry with any of our guards either. The occasional alley-oop with Booker, but it doesn't happen that often. So why not just let him shoot threes? I honestly don't care. He's been so bad that it can't get worse. And maybe you could tap into something. I don't think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, if he was a 40% 3-point shooter on volume, that would change his whole career. It would change.
He'd be Mike Muscala. Congratulations, your career's saved.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great for the Suns maybe he is. When he shoots it, it's obviously a slow shot. It looks a little awkward, but that does not discount his ability to make it. Maybe it's in there a little bit, and maybe the Suns are sleeping on it. But I imagine what's happening is he's shooting in practice, and they know if that scales or not. So I'm not going to say that they're making some sort of mistake by not making him shoot threes. Last part of his question: is there anything weird that the Suns haven't tried that they could try? Sam, that was another part of it.
Have we done KD at the 5 with 4 shooters? I guess we did for like a couple possessions. Just surround him with Grayson, Eric, Book, and Beal, and just see what happens. You're not going to get any rebounds, but maybe it'd be fun. Otherwise, I don't have like there's not a ton of role players on this team that I'm going to bat for at this point.
Yeah.
I guess like what weird stuff did you have in mind?
I guess it would be bowl with the starters, but they tried that in the Clippers game. I think it was where they actually tried that for a while because I just, it'd be fun to see and, try that again. I'd like to see that again. See how it looks.
Inverted pick and roll where Bowl is the guard and Josh Okogie is the screener.
Yeah, maybe. Sure. Why not? All right, let's listen to another one here.
Hey, Sam and Mike. My name is Kyle, longtime listener. Love your guys' content. Just sitting here at the halftime of the Lakers-Suns game, and we're looking like we're on the way to another solid game by Bull. So I'm just wondering, when are you guys going to join the Bull train and argue for his extension like you did with Grayson Allen's last episode, too? So he's been really good. I'm really happy. So, all right. Share the Bull love. Peace out. Bye.
I love it. I don't know. I haven't looked up to see if he's extension eligible.
I don't think he is because he's just on a 1-year contract, right? He just signed a minimum deal with us.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't be extension eligible until that contract expires. However, that does not mean we're not fans.
Well, theoretically, if he was extension eligible, how long of a stretch of him playing well would it take for you to feel confident in him being a good player next year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point.
More than 5 games, right?
I probably want to see him do it for a couple months before we get there. Yeah, that's fair. Grayson
has had a few months of being like the 4th to 5th best player on this team, and he's earned that right. And I think somebody posted in our Discord a comparison between Grayson Allen's stats and Cam Johnson's stats this year, and Cam Johnson's making over $20 million a year, and they're pretty similar. Grayson obviously has unfortunately, he's not as tall. Like, it would be helpful if he was as tall as Cam Johnson, but Cam
Johnson is just tall Grayson Allen, and just like Giannis is tall Josh Okogie.
That's actually more accurate. I actually like that one.
Yeah.
That's true, in that they're both smart players who shoot really well. But yeah, I think Bull, he's been great. We're having fun. I was wrong. I hope I'm wrong as far as his ability to be on this team long term. Because, we thought he was going to be cut as soon as like 2 weeks ago. But now he's looking like a guy who's played his way into the actual rotation. But we need to see it for a little bit longer to know that it's real, I think.
Kevin Durant is just tall Devin Booker. Sorry. I'll stop now.
Hey guys, it's Max. I called before, so I wanted to say thank you for answering my first call, and apologies for being a little bit doom and gloom about the team on that one. It was a rough time after Christmas. But I wanted to ask you guys, I saw that the Suns are giving up 40% from three in the last 15 games, and the volume is 37.6 attempts for the opponent, which I think is like fifth or sixth worst in the league for both of those marks. Do you guys think that it's a scheme problem? Do you think it's a lack of effort, personnel? Like, kind of just wondering what you guys thought about why we're giving up so many threes and why it seems that teams always seem to shoot well from three against us. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
So he's talking about I didn't know this stat actually. 40% from three against the Suns in the last 15 games. And teams are shooting a lot of threes on the Suns. Well, I guess, what do you think about that, Sam?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess there are two parts of it. I tend to think, especially when we're dividing up the season by little chunks of 10 games or 15 games or whatever, a 40% here, 40% there doesn't concern me. There are going to be natural ebbs and flows, and kind of studies have shown that, there's only so much you can do as a defense really to control the percentage that the rest of the league as a whole is averaging against you. So I'm not so concerned about the percentage. I think scheme wise, you talk about volume when you're consistently giving up a lot of threes to other teams, independent of what their personnel is, then that is a problem. And that's something that you should definitely talk about fixing. The percentage you hope just naturally kind of goes down on its own, regresses to the mean eventually. But volume is for sure something we could talk about, Mike.
Well, scheme wise, the Suns did not play. They were not doing a good job of protecting the paint recently. The overall focus of their defense has been, to me, it seems, on protecting the paint as much as possible, not giving up as many shots at the rim. And in some ways, that means that you're going to sacrifice some three-point shots. The traditional Frank Vogel style of defense is putting as much pressure on the ball as possible and trying to force the ball away from the corners and the rim, right? So less corner threes, less shots at the rim. You do end up giving up a lot of threes, just sort of at the top of the arc of the three-pointer.
That'd be a really good thing for us to look up. Yeah, what's the, because corner threes tend to be much more efficient shots than above the breaks too. So like, what are the quality of these threes that we're giving up is important to see.
Yeah, and like you said, 40%, sometimes that's just the luck of the draw here. But I do think that they're traditionally Frank Vogel style defenses, similarly to, I think, what was happening in Milwaukee the last couple of years. They do end up giving up a lot of three-point shots, but try to not give up anything at the rim and make it as difficult as possible to get the best shot, which is a dunk or a layup. And if the Suns can do that while giving up some three-pointers, I think I would feel better about that. If they're not doing either, that would be obviously a disaster. But I do think they have to be more locked in on contesting. So if you're Devin Booker, if you're Kevin Durant, I think these are the two worst defenders right now. And you're helping on drives into the paint, and they kick it out to the corner on the guy that you're helping off of, don't just turn and look at him. Run out at him. Make them think a little bit when they're putting up that shot. And I think that will help a little bit in them being more likely to miss those shots, because maybe the strategy is helping off of these guys because they're not great three-point shooters traditionally. But part of the reason often these guys aren't great three-point shooters is because they miss when they're contested. We've seen it with somebody like Josh Okogie. If there's any contest at all last season, he's going to miss. The wide open ones, he was shooting, 35% or whatever last season. Now it's different. But a lot of times with guys, just a little bit of contest makes a big difference. So I do think there's more effort to be going around with these guys on the perimeter to make sure that even if they're helping, they make more of an effort to get out there on the perimeter. And I think they've been, actually the last few games, they've been doing a pretty good job of it.
It feels like the eye test is getting better, but I do agree with you. There's a discipline aspect to it where oftentimes they're guarding the first action well, and then just the second or third, they're eventually collapsing as the shot clock, comes down and comes close to expiring. And those are the possessions that really deflate you the most, is when you play good defense for 15, 20 seconds, and then at the end you give up an open three. So, yeah, we got to clean it up.
Yes, thank you to Max for that question. Thank you as well to, let's see, Kyle, Jake, and Hooper Fidel from the Discord for all the questions that we got this week. If you want to give us a call, it's 480-420-6553. We always appreciate all of you for listening and for giving us questions. I think it's been really fun answering these questions at the end of the podcast. We'll be back with a Patreon episode midweek this week after Tuesday's Sacramento game. Please, Suns, give us something fun to talk about in that one. Patreon.com/thetimeline. If you want to sign up for our Patreon, join us on Discord, join us for our Patreon episodes. Playback this week, probably most likely Friday
Friday
New
night
Orleans.
is what we're thinking. Might do a League Pass surfing game at some point this week too. We'll keep you guys updated on that on social media, just if you want to hang out with us as we watch other NBA games. But for the Suns, it's probably going to be Friday against
New Orleans. Yeah, so hopefully that could be a fun one as well. So join us, playback.tv/thetimeline. And as always, ethicalhoops.com for any merchandise, hopefully adding a hat or something new there in the next few weeks. But we appreciate you all, and we'll be back very soon.